It's not controversial to say that art and media often reflect the culture of their creators, and countries and cultures have their own artistic traits and trends. And this is true of video games.
Fucking Bin Laden over here thinking he's good with the fucking RPG.
Think of the distinction drawn between Western RPGs and JRPGs. The differences between them are just like the differences between anime and cartoons. Anime really is just Japanese cartoons, but the Japanese style of animation and storytelling is so radically different that it's treated like its own genre. These displays of culture are natural byproducts of culture, and to analyze games based on their country of origin would inevitably become an exploration and explanation of those cultures that would utterly derail this paper. The Japanese, understandably so, like large physics-defying breasts, and as such, they appear in much of their media, including their video games, such as in Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball, where the female characters from the Dead or Alive fighting games appear in bikinis of various and dubious coverage, all while playing volleyball. Basically the video game equivalent of naming your porn folder homework.
Play with a friend, or play with yourself. Dead or Alive Extreme Beach Volleyball. Tecmo. 100% games.
For hot beaches, there's no power greater than X.
Why is this such a Japanese thing to do? I couldn't tell you, and I won't try to. But there is an exception I do believe merits discussion, and that is the countries and cultures that have deliberately used video games to express themselves. Those of the former Eastern Bloc. When the Soviet Union collapsed on December 26 of 1991, it spawned a slew of independent nations across Eastern and Central Europe, all of which were getting on their feet and adjusting to capitalism at the time when computers and video games started to become more accessible. These nations, whose individual cultures were suppressed in favor of the parties, began to tell their own stories through the internet and video games. The Metro franchise was conceived by Russian author Dmitry Glukhovsky while riding the Moscow Metro to and from high school. He learned that Moscow's metro system was also designed to be a nuclear shelter, making it the largest nuclear shelter in the world. Being a fan of post-apocalyptic fiction, Glukhovsky was inspired to write Metro 2033, in which the people of Moscow have taken to living in the metro following nuclear strikes, and societies have developed in the various stations across the city. Glukhovsky wanted to bypass traditional publishing, so he published his book online in 2002 on a website he'd created himself. Eventually, it was physically printed, yet to this day, the original ebook is still available for free online. It developed a global cult following, and Glukhovsky has allowed various authors to write and officially publish their own works set in his universe, taking place in Moscow and abroad, which he supports and endorses on his official website. He's just a real stand-up guy like that. He was approached by Ukrainian developers who had previously worked for GSC Game World on STALKER: Shadow of Chernobyl, and were looking for something similar to develop at their new studio, 4A Games, and asked if they could make a game based on Metro 2033 as a jumping-off point due to the relative similarity. Glukhovsky was a fan of STALKER, so he happily agreed. Russian expatriate Roman Obolin, better known as No Fuckers, makes videos discussing Russian politics and pop culture, including gaming. He cheekily describes the original STALKER as
nothing short of legendary, not only in the post-Soviet countries but also around the entirety of the world, because it provides the ultimate Slavic experience.
The book, Metro 2033, is slow-paced and philosophical, reflecting on human nature, war, and the psychological effects of surviving the supposed end of the world, and all the horror therein. In that respect, I liken it to the unofficial sister films The Day After and Threads, which explore the events leading up to and following nuclear strikes on Lawrence, Kansas, and Sheffield, South Yorkshire, from uniquely American and British perspectives. The Day After, at first, seems to be a typical Hollywood movie about a cast of everyday heroes who will rise up against all odds. But in the end, they're all broken down by the new reality, and this subversion of audience expectations makes the ending and message about nuclear war all the more haunting for American audiences. Threads is altogether unique, as it was made by the BBC and is presented like a BBC documentary, creating a unique sense of horror and realness for the contemporary British public who are accustomed to the real thing. While the films follow a cast which represent average people from the cities they are set in, and follows their journeys before and after the bombs, Metro 2033 follows Artyom as he is tasked with crossing the metro to deliver urgent news. During his journey, he visits various stations and meets people, through which Glukowski explores the different facets and approaches to life in that hypothetical reality. The Hansa has adopted capitalism, the Red Line communism, and the Fourth Reich Nazi fascism, while Polis has a caste system, and there's even a cannibalistic cult that venerates a worm they believe excavated the tunnels. The two films in Metro all lean heavily into horror, but where the films are grittily realistic, showing environmental destruction and health effects in a way that literature couldn't, Metro 2033 is psychological and uses light science fiction to enhance that by probing the paranoid imagination and the human fear of the unknown and twisted. In addition to pondering what being shut underground after the surface has been rendered inhospitable to humanity would do to the psyche, it also asks how humanity would respond to being evolutionarily outdated, surpassed by the mutants who now thrive on the surface. A question similar to the ideas raised by Fallout and the Master, Fallout's ultimate antagonist. The Fallout franchise is set in an alternate timeline where the Cold War never ended, and instead tensions rose between the US and China, culminating in a resource war over oil and ultimately a nuclear exchange in 2077. The series utilizes a retro-futuristic aesthetic to criticize Red Scare-era American propaganda, consumerism, corporate capitalism, and government corruption. The Master and his super mutants are the result of a chemical called the Forced Evolutionary Virus, or FEV, created by the US government to engineer super soldiers. The Master's master plan is to turn all humans into super mutants, as he believes they are far better suited to life in the wasteland, and are thusly the next stage in human evolution.
Mutants are best equipped to deal with the world today.
Who else?
The ghouls?
Please.
Normals?
They brought nuclear death to us all.
The Master has a point. The mutants of Fallout 1 also aren't brutes. They have a plan, they have leaders. In short, they're a society that has structure and a goal, and while it's different, a case can be made that they're not the bad guys.
However, FEV renders super mutants sterile, and the Master is unable to find a way around this. So his plan falls apart. When you confront him, you can open up guns blazing right out of the gate, but if you talk and provide him with proof of mutant infertility, the realization prompts him to reflect, and his regret and despair will cause him to commit suicide.
Preposterous!
The FEV2 virus doesn't destroy the reproductive organs of those it mutates. Do you have proof? But it cannot be. This would mean that
All my work
has been for nothing. I don't think that I can continue
continue.
to have done the things I have done in the name of progress and healing. It was madness. I can see that now. Madness.
Madness?
There is no hope.
Subsequent games in the series and the TV adaptation continue to explore the society of pre-war America through its ruins, and the new societies that have risen from the ashes. The tagline, "War never changes," defines the series, as it is highly skeptical of authority, those who would seek to wield it, and what it takes to attain it. In Metro 2035, Artyom becomes obsessed with finding evidence of life in other cities beyond Moscow, only to uncover a conspiracy orchestrated to keep Moscow isolated from the rest of the world. This book also features a war between the Reich and the Red Line, thematically focused on humanity's propensity to destroy itself and government oppression. The Reds are typical communists who demand party veneration and oppress any dissent. In 2033, the Reich persecuted all non-Russians, but in 2035, they changed their doctrine to welcome any full human, instead persecuting anyone with corrupted genes, such as mutations, cancer, goiters, and so on, using them as slaves. Thematically, it explores authoritarianism, and how people who believe they know what's best for others only ever oppress them.
In some regards, I've used my fiction texts as a metaphorical description and social commentary of what was going on in Russia. So even the novel Metro 2033 and its sequels, it is actually in like a social commentary in disguise, speaking of Russia witnessing the downfall of the Soviet Union and turning back into dictatorship. Well, in a metaphor of people surviving in a bunker and refusing to believe that the war is over.
Metro 2033 the game, released in 2010, however, is very different because it's a first-person shooter and plays a lot like Stalker. You play as Artyom, now a silent protagonist, save for narrated journal entries at the start of each level, as he traverses the metro, fighting or evading bandits and mutants. The story has been reworked to fit the medium, and as such, much of, if not the majority of, the novel's depth is lost in adaptation, as the ludic elements required of an FPS take priority over the complexities of the narrative and Artyom's character. Therefore, the narrative of the game spends much of its time on the ideas tied to conflict, as fighting makes up the bulk of the gameplay, and evolution, as you also fight horrific mutants that are inhuman and spooky. The inciting incident is an attack by the so-called Dark Ones, humanoid mutants that have begun trying to invade the metro and Artyom's home station. Like in the book, the final mission sees Artyom calling in a missile strike to eliminate their nest on the surface, and then wondering if that was the right thing to do. Due to the nuclear war, the surface is inhospitable to humanity, and some say the Dark Ones are the next step in human evolution. Humanity evolved to survive on the poisoned surface that the old humans created. So, in destroying the Dark Ones, have you just doomed humanity? This question is no less poignant and conflicting when prompted by the game as opposed to the book. A typical FPS is, at its most fundamental level, structured as a series of missions, each with an objective or objectives the player must complete while defeating various enemies, set in an interesting environment that serves as an arena. The story and premise of Metro 2033 already neatly incorporated the building blocks for that structure. The levels are the tunnels Artyom must traverse, and the enemies are the aforementioned bandits and mutants. It is also ripe for survival horror, and incorporates resource management mechanics where Artyom has to scavenge for ammunition, gas mask filters, and healing items, the scarcity of which makes enemy encounters more tense, stressful, and ultimately frightening. Each populated station serves as a safe area where Artyom can trade for supplies and upgrade his gear before heading back out into the tunnels. In an interview titled, "Get This, Games Are Literature," Dmitry Glukhovsky talked about how his book was adapted.
The first game they just adapted from the book. I only had to read the dialogue and make sure that the dialogue feels authentic enough. But basically, to your question, I always had the approach that the games should be told as seriously as the grown-up TV series by HBO are being told, or by the good art house movies. So the games should not avoid being controversial, they should not avoid being dramatic, and even in the case of the Metro franchise, the games have allowed themselves to be both philosophical and lyrical, sentimental at some points. Definitely they were not just mere shooters. And that what helped us differentiate, because the budgets were so low. The only way we could stand out was through narrative and through the atmosphere, because definitely we cannot be investing as much, they being a tiny studio from Ukraine and I'm being a no-name author from Russia, we cannot outmatch the huge behemoths.
What the game adaptation truly excels at is the atmosphere, showcasing the conditions of the metro in a way that the books simply can't. They are filthy and claustrophobic, and traversing them is tense. At any moment, a mutant or bandit can jump out and ambush you, and you have nowhere to run. The gunfights in the tunnels with bullets pinging off walls, muzzle flashes lighting up the dark, and the gunfire reverberating in an enclosed space are tense and stressful, especially when you're low on ammo.
I used to live nearby. Before the war, up there. I was on the train when it happened. I tried calling my family, but couldn't get through.
What the?
The surface is blasted and burnt out, everything is rusted and decayed, and being Russia, covered in gray snow and ice. In the stations, people live in cramped hovels, wear ratty clothes, and have nothing to eat but pigs and mushrooms, and rats. However cramped and claustrophobic the metro stations may be, they're still cozy bastions of warmth and safety. Perhaps because they doubled as fallout shelters, Russia built them with beautiful architecture intended to represent the beauty and glory of the country and its people, with the intention of boosting the morale of those who pass through them every day and would possibly call them home. In contrast, the surface is cold, dead, and forbidding, and the Dark One's nest is like a hive. Do we want to become that? Should we call them human? Does their apparent inhumanity mean they have less of a right to life than we do? The answer is up to individual interpretation, and once again, this disparity is highlighted by the visual medium and the player's ability to exist in these environments as Artyom.
That day, humanity was executed. The righteous and the sinful were called to be rendered according to their deeds. And we hid from God's sight in the metro. And we were saved from his wrath. And he apparently decided that flushing us out wasn't worth the trouble. Then he went about his business, or perhaps died, while we stayed on this used up and discarded earth and continued just going with it, going nowhere.
The Metro games succeed for many of the same reasons that S.T.A.L.K.E.R does. S.T.A.L.K.E.R takes place in an alternate version of the Chernobyl exclusion zone, inspired by Roadside Picnic and its film adaptation, S.T.A.L.K.E.R, where various secret labs were established within the exclusion zone, leading to a second disaster in 2006, which spawned various scientific anomalies and mutants to make it that little bit more adverse to your health. The titular stalkers are scavengers who explore the zone and uncover its mysteries. It's one of the most unique games of its generation, beloved for its atmosphere, premise, and difficulty. According to some of the developers,
Це такий синтез класного шутера і радянської атмосфери, особливо там на Заході. Вона всіх цікавила.
For many, it put Ukraine on the map by its own cultural and artistic merits, and gave Ukrainians something special and unique to their country and culture to take pride in.
S.T.A.L.K.E.R was one of the most breakthrough anticipated titles of that time. A small studio was able to instill their culture, their background, and what that country had gone through in a fiction world.
The Chernobyl disaster, in the eyes of many Ukrainians, marked the beginning of the end of the Soviet Union. Because the exclusion zone was abandoned exactly as it was, it serves as one massive time capsule of that period in Ukrainian history, making it the perfect setting to tell a story steeped in contemporary Ukrainian culture and identity. Glukhovsky is now wanted in Russia for his outspoken opposition of the 2022 invasion of Ukraine, and faces imprisonment if he returns to Russia.
Because of saying that the war should be stopped and that Vladimir Putin is personally responsible for it. So you cannot call a war. It should be called a special military operation. Otherwise, you're discrediting the Russian army.
As it is illegal to spread misinformation about the Russian military. Thankfully, he fled the country prior to his arrest warrant being issued and is currently in hiding in Europe.
The trial's going well, you know. Without me, I'm not there.
You were sentenced, weren't you, in absentia by Moscow in the summer of 2023 to 8.5 years in jail.
Yeah, 8.5. It's like Federico Fellini. It's like it's very cinematographic term in prison to spend. Yeah. Thank you, the Russian authorities, for giving me this number.
His view of the Russian government and the invasion of Ukraine is that the Russian government is cosplaying as the Soviet Union, but only recreating the worst aspects of it, citing that they haven't brought back universal access to healthcare and education, but parade troops through the Red Square.
My readers from Ukraine, from Kharkov and from Kiev started sending me pictures of themselves hiding on the stations of the subways of Kiev and Kharkov, exactly the way I'm describing that in the books, you know, because of the Russian bombs. And it was horrifying.
As of writing, S.T.A.L.K.E.R 2 Heart of Chernobyl, which was released on November 20th, 2024, is not just facing a possible ban in Russia, but the simple act of playing the game could see Russian gamers arrested for nothing less than treason. By buying a Ukrainian product, your money could then be funneled to the Ukrainian military, contributing to the opposition of Russia.
And this stuff is extremely real and likely because there's already been people who have been convicted of treason and have gone to prison in Russia in the past 2 years who have essentially been spotted donating a small amount of money to Ukraine. So yeah, if you want to play Stalker 2 in Russia and actually buy it, it's a little bit terrifying.
Glukhovsky also explained in his interview that there's no independent media in Russia. Media is controlled directly by the government or oligarchs, who are essentially cronies of Vladimir Putin. Creators can be blacklisted for speaking against the government, meaning they are functionally banned from participating in any creative industry.
Right now, all the opposition leaders in Russia are either killed or emigrated, forced to immigrate.
This is your boy Roman, your favorite neighborhood Russian. Hi guys, Zunstay. Welcome to a brand new video, and as you can see guys, I'm once again somewhere in Georgia.
It's a law about military censorship, that you cannot say anything about this war that is different from the official statements of the defense ministry. If you have your own opinion, or you think that Russians commit war crimes, or you say that they're bombing the residential areas, then you get your 10 years, you know.
My friend in Moscow, he called me in the middle of the night. He worked in television and he saw Putin's speech before it was aired. And he said that, Dasha, you have to run, it's war.
Stalker 2 was initially slated for a 2022 release before the invasion disrupted development. The Xbox documentary on Stalker 2's development details how, in the period leading up to the invasion, under the direction of producer and crisis manager Maria Grigorovich, GSC's management began to plan the company's evacuation from Kiev and potential route out of Ukraine. The company ultimately evacuated 183 employees to the city of Uzhhorod, while the other 139 chose to remain in Kiev, with many enlisting to fight. The evacuated team found an office in Prague where they continued to work on the game, with remote assistance from those who chose to remain in Ukraine. Most remarkably and commendably, they have kept those who enlisted on payroll, with their former positions guaranteed upon their return to civilian life. GSC doesn't sell their games in Russia, and they cut Russian language dubs from Stalker 2, citing that the Soviets suppressed the Ukrainian language and culture in favor of Russia's, and Russia likely intends to do the same if they win. They even changed the Russian-like English transliteration of Chernobyl to a more Ukrainian Chornobyl. To the people at GSC, Stalker 2 is a piece of Ukrainian culture and contemporary heritage, and developing it was a stand for Ukraine.
Я можу розповісти, у мене в селі не було світла. Зв'язку було повністю нуль, інтернету ніякого, і 2 тижні сиділи в тому погребі з дружиною, зі своїми котами. Та у мене було відчуття, що мене кинули, але це як воно сталкер. І треба вчитись якось в таких ситуаціях жити. Я перейшов на малювання на папері, тому розробка у мене не зупинялась. У мене був інтерес тільки сталкер. І у мене є ціль в житті зробити цей проєкт.
In response, pro-war Russian hackers launched cyber attacks on GSC and leaked parts of the game. Another game caught up in the politics of the Russian-Ukrainian war is Atomic Heart, an FPS set in a Soviet-inspired atom punk dystopia, developed by Mundfish, a now multinational studio with Russian roots and, strangely, investment from the Russian state-owned gas company Gazprom. Some critics say that the Soviet utopia the game is set in romanticizes communism and the Soviets, but that's not entirely accurate, as the premise of the game follows that utopia collapsing into dystopia. The use of Soviet imagery is simply because A, the aesthetic is cool, and B, the game satirizes the idealism of the Soviets, contrasted with the unfortunate realities of their system. Atomic Heart's actual depiction of the Soviet state is more nuanced than full-throated support. It's in line with BioShock's approach to objectivism in the Confederacy, crafting a world defined by technological progress and the social problems that those technological advances have failed to solve. To call Atomic Heart a straight-up celebration of the Soviet Union would be a misrepresentation. Aside from Stalker 2's place in the hearts of Ukrainians, the content of the game has very little to do with the conflict with Russia. Likewise, Atomic Heart, despite its developer's origins and romanticized Soviet aesthetic, never sends any overtly pro-Russia or pro-Soviet message. They are just unfortunate games caught up in the middle of a tragic war. Mundfish has never come out and openly decried Russia or declared support for Ukraine, again, as of writing. I suspect that this is for the sake of the company, given their investor, and for their Russian employees' safety. Rather, they have maintained a position of neutrality, saying only that they oppose violence and support peace. NoFuckers believes the Russian and Ukrainian responses to these games are a perfect representation of how the two countries worked.
Is that you see in Russia, when this huge Ukrainian game is coming out, first of all, you can't even buy it because, well, the Ukrainian developers themselves don't want that to happen, but also Steam and PSN or whatever are not even working in Russia, right? Whereas on the other side, in Ukraine, right, this Russian game came out, Atomic Heart. The Ukrainian government just made a statement saying that we believe that this game, contains some Russian propaganda, and also that we believe that, and we call on our Ukrainian citizens to, avoid this game and ignore it, right? And that is it. There was no message saying you are going to Gulag.
He goes on to say that the underlying tragedy of the politicization of these games specifically is the impact on ordinary Russian citizens. The Russian reality is one of suppression, censorship, and poverty.
All of this bullshit that's in our people's heads about geopolitics and NATO, threatening to destroy a country and whatnot, is precisely there to explain to people why they're poor. So people have to be told that the reason that they're actually poor is not because, they've been lied to for decades, they've been embezzled, that their wealth has been stolen from them, that their life has been stolen from them. Not only do people not hear that point of view, but they also don't want to hear it when you put it out to them because people are very scared to admit that they've been lied to and that they have actually been bamboozled. They can't even imagine what life is like for other people in the world. And trust me guys, when you actually go to different places, it changes your perspective a lot. Being in other countries and seeing how they live, how they make things happen, has allowed me to see a lot of flaws in Russia, in just day-to-day life, things that I've never thought about before. I've never thought about how dirty and shitty my city looks, because I've never seen anything else, really. I've never thought how truly poor and uneventful the lives of the majority of the people I know that gave me life is. You know what I mean? And I know those people would like to have a different life. But yes, Russians love Stalker, and it's, kind of crazy and sad that these are the circumstances in which Stalker 2 has to be released, and this is the political environment. It really does show how divided Russia and Ukraine has become, obviously. How, back in the day, let's say 20 years ago, we could, be happy for each other's achievements, right? And even the things that we used to collectively cherish and enjoy together, for example, Stalker, once again, the classic games, these things just no longer can be cherished and enjoyed together.
What I'm feeling now is that this country is not the country that I used to love. It's reigned by fear and pretending that nothing is going on. So people are just trying to be conform, and then they do not dare to say, and even start not to dare even think freely.
Yeah, I think that I've just been saying the same things. The situation has been changing a lot. This train has been going, like I was on a platform waving my hand, and the train has been going direction Gulag, direction Siberia. And so the things that I've been saying, they started to look like frighteningly bold, even though 15 years ago, 10 years ago, that was just a normal occasional commentary. I think that it's just important to keep saying the same things, and not be threatened and pressured by that, because people are very. It's normal and totally okay to be conformist. The entire Russia is conformist, but this is exactly how dictatorships come to life.
Stalker is one of the most popular games ever in Russia, and hugely influenced the generation of gamers who grew up with it. Much of what makes Stalker resonate with Ukrainians is equally as resonant to the people of Russia, hence the huge Russian following. For Russians, escaping into a game means getting to escape the Russian reality under Putin for a little while, and now that is just one more thing that has been taken from them by their government and by the war. One thing both Stalker and the Metro games beautifully capture is the post-Soviet Eastern European spirit. Both games have this somber atmosphere that blends the natural beauty of that part of the world with the lingering artifacts of that terrible history that has marred it for the past 100-some years, like a chill in your bones. And then you have that wry, fatalistic sense of humor that I'll boil down to, yes, things are pretty bad, and they will probably stay bad for a while, but that won't stop us from making the best of things and enjoying the simple pleasures while we can, like music and alcohol. There's a really beautiful video that surfaced online that you might have seen of a Russian soldier singing and playing guitar in Bakhmut. It's a rendition of a song that dates back to the Soviet-Afghan War. Everything is gray and destroyed except for the bright wood of the guitar, and while the music is beautiful, you can hear fighting in the background. I think it perfectly encapsulates the perseverance that has become a part of their cultures and is reflected in their media.
This is the first break I've taken today. Radio equipment, microchips, and spare parts are to be brought directly to Dial.
Hi, how are you, Artyom?
But 7 years have passed now, we've heard nothing from them. Never seen.
А если спросят, о чем пишу, мы вновь соврим. Только знай, что я не говори. А если спросят, о чем пишу, мы вновь соврим. И только знай, что еду в Баку, не говори.
An interesting game partially inspired by these cultures is Grand Theft Auto 4. GTA 4 follows Niko Bellic, a veteran of the Yugoslav wars, after he immigrates to Liberty City, a fictionalized version of New York City. Niko was a teenage soldier who then fell into crime and is seeking a new life in the United States, only to find out that the American dream is a lie, and the issues he fled in his home country are just as rampant here, so he quickly finds himself sucked into the criminal underworld once again. Rockstar Games has a history of telling dark, complex stories that criticize authority and corruption, specifically in America, through Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2, L.A. Noire, Bully, and the Grand Theft Auto series, which is their arguable magnum opus. GTA blends storytelling where criminals and the government aren't all that different, with a backdrop of cutting and crude social satire. The America of GTA is a place where people drive Fisters, P-Nods, and Maibatsus, eat Burger Shot and Cluckenbell, and drink Spunk, or the deliciously infectious E-Cola, while watching America's Next Top Hooker, or Impotent Rage, the liberal superhero, on conglomerated national television, or CNT for short.
Cowboys in the heartland, bankers in the city. We love cars, guns, and big old plastic titties. Let's grab a case of Pisswasser and drink for the USA. Ought to speak English if you like it here so much. Not Spanish or Chinese or British. They're fucking Dutch. Fuck the Dutch. Pisswasser, German fighting lager for export only.
The Satire is a part of the world building, and it's emphasized even further by its main character Niko Bellic, who comes from the Balkan states, a place so ravaged by war and poverty that the worries of its inhabitants are so much more revolving around life and death rather than materialistic desires. The contrast increases the context here, and players are forced to think about where their priorities are held.
In times like these, it's important to remember the good things. Sure, the economy may be a little rough, and we may be shuttering schools, hospitals, and libraries to pay union pensions, but San Andreas is still the place where dreams are made. This is where counterculture began and then morphed into a nanny state. A place that preaches environmental stewardship but has a terrible public transit system and the worst air in the world. Experience more of San Andreas, the suburban sprawl, no sense of community, and no building more than 30 years old. Where fluffy children's theme park animals are both our heritage and our culture. San Andreas leads the country in removing pristine first-growth forest to build generic strip malls and tract mansions. San Andreas, we won't be broken hypocrites forever. Brought to you by the San Andreas Tourism Board.
Stealing and driving cars is a huge part of Grand Theft Auto. Go figure. GTA is open world, meaning you have the entire city to explore. And the primary gameplay loop is driving to, playing, and driving to the next mission to progress the story, as well as the side activities you can do in between, or just causing chaos and getting into police chases. Satire has been artfully woven into this fundamental part of the game, so much so that it feels utterly organic, but it very much was intentional. In GTA, there are various radio stations, each playing different genres of music, as well as advertisements and even talk shows.
You've been educated in a public school.
Well, sort of. I learned to despise the common herd in a public school. So then I learned about the world by being homeschooled by a friendly teacher.
All with their own DJs. They function exactly like real-world radio stations, giving the player something to listen to while they drive around and helping make the game feel more immersive and realistic. That itself is part of the beauty of the world design. Aside from the absurdity of the satire, everything else in this secondary world is detailed and realistic, to the point where it wouldn't even be uncanny if not for the satire. However, the ever-present radio also has the secondary function of constantly subjecting Nico and the player to this invasive stream of satirical media.
Sure, you can turn it off, but the interesting design decision is that you only turn off the radio in that car, as opposed to flipping a setting in the options menu. Given how much you're jumping in and out of cars, the radio's message is as oppressive as any other form of advertising, something the developers were very careful about making sure of.
Okay, now Zach, tell us about the plan to end hunger.
Well, it's quite simple, really, almost facile. I looked at hunger as a supply and demand problem. Too many hungry people. Simple. Rather than reducing the number of hungry people, simply reduce the number of people using involuntary euthanasia for the weak and unfortunate and turn them into compost for our crops. It's simple.
You want to kill people to reduce hunger?
Absolutely. It's brilliant.
It's barbaric.
I blame video games. They're teaching our kids to solve hunger by slaughtering the weak. We should only slaughter the weak to win wars and sell guns to unjust governments we keep in power.
I despise the government.
The government's like the paparazzi, you know? They follow you around, and then when you mess up, they are on you, man. They are on you with a zoom lens.
And even if you always turn the radio off, as you drive around, you'll be seeing billboards advertising the sitcom Drunk Daddy in the door, Ace Hole Pharmacies, Pisswasser Lager.
Hey, we're gonna keep them illegals out. Guns and Pisswasser.
Schlongberg Sachs Financial Services, or the high-end fashion company Anna Rex. All perpetual reminders that this society and its economy is built on exploitation, manipulation, and predation, and is wasteful and shameless, degenerate and corrupt.
There are over 8 million species of migratory birds that travel through San Andreas. But every day, hundreds of thousands of birds are slaughtered by a not-so-silent predator, windmills. So-called environmentalists' desperate need to destroy our state's indigenous oil industry will lead to noisy, nature-killing windmills literally in your backyard. Nothing is more dangerous for a bird than a slow-moving windmill. They, like any half-sentient creature, much prefer 100-acre industrial plants spewing out noxious chemicals.
The America shown in GTA is one without any of the soft language and political correctness George Carlin spoke so scathingly of.
Wake up in the morning, drop a big old log out of here. You ain't got time for nothing fruity like a jog. Marry a fat bitch and die working like a dog.
which obfuscates the distastefulness of the reality in which we live and makes social evils easier to overlook and or tolerate. Unalived.
Poor people used to live in slums. Now the economically disadvantaged occupy substandard housing in the inner cities. And they're broke. They're broke. They don't have a negative cash flow position. They're fucking broke.
This is America. Our fires burn bright, especially in the trash barrels that keep people warm, or after a riot because there's no jobs. America is hurting. We're at each other's throats, wondering if this country can ever come back from the abyss while bankers loot the coffers. The thing about steel, it's hot and cold at the same time, like a woman or Lady Happiness.
Because a lot of them were fired. You know, fired. Management wanted to curtail redundancies in the human resources area, so many people are no longer viable members of the workforce. Smug, greedy, well-fed white people have invented a language to conceal their sins. It's as simple as that.
We made the problems, and we're solving them together, because we're in this together, which is why it's only right you're paying for the mistakes we made together. Subpar cars and overly entitled executives. Together, we're holding on to the dream. That dream is luxury, and a gas-guzzling luxury car, created in a nation that's 95% condemned. We haven't forgotten what America wants. A hunk of overpriced shit that goes fast and gets you vapid pussy. Bravado. United we stand. Together we fall.
These aspects of American culture are more apparent to an immigrant like Nico than to someone who's grown up around them, and this thick satire helps the player see things more like how he does.
What do you think about America, Nico? Tell me straight. You love it, no?
I don't know, Roman. It is the same as any other place, only louder. People don't know how to shut up here.
I bet you would like to teach them, wouldn't you, cousin? But you can't. Or at least you can't teach everyone. Really, you don't like it? The lights, the titties, the food, the opportunities? Come on, Nico, it's kind of incredible.
It's stupid. Everything is just advertising with nothing to back it up. They tell you you're eating the best burger ever. And you believe it until you're sweating out all the chemicals in it and the hormones are making your balls feel funny.
My balls feel fine, but I did notice my man tits getting larger when I was eating a Cluckenbell every day.
Everything else is fake too. The titties aren't real, and the opportunities aren't opportunities at all. To seize them, you end up in so much debt that you'll be a slave for the rest of your life.
I cannot believe what you are saying. Do you seriously mean that you don't like fake titties, cousin?
Seriously.
When compared to the American dream he was promised, he finds it all disgusting, just a way to obfuscate how similar America is to his homeland, which many Americans see as being a backward shithole. GTA 4 was released in 2008, and it is filled with period-appropriate commentary, especially on the War on Terror, given the New York City-inspired setting. You use an early smartphone as a critical means of engaging with the world, like calling other characters to start missions. You can visit internet cafes. You can even browse various people's blogs on the in-game internet. At the start of the game, the bridges between the various islands are closed because of a terrorist threat.
Imagine Grand Theft Auto 4 in 30 years, 50 years, 100 years. Imagine walking around a version of 1920s New York made by people in the 1920s. I cannot imagine a more powerful time capsule of clothing styles, cultural attitudes, architecture, and countless other parts of life which you can explore.
Florian, open the door. Nemoj desi peder.
Govor Ingleski, and I told you it's Bernie.
Then Bernie, open the door. What's going on?
Come in, come in. The haters are trying to kill me. I can't stand it. I won't stand it. It's not fair. I'm just being me.
Bernie, what are you talking about?
I came to this country to be myself. to get away from small-minded, angry, macho pricks.
Oh, like me?
Yes!
What's the problem?
Someone is threatening to kill me. Every time I go out jogging and doing aerobics or playing Ultimate Disc, some guy comes up and threatens me. He's loco.
Why is he threatening you?
Because... I think just because I'm fabulous.
What?
It's reasonably well known that Niko Belic's appearance is inspired by that of Russian actor Vladimir Mashkov in Behind Enemy Lines. What is a little less known is that the plot of GTA 4 is inspired by the Russian gangster films Brother and Brother 2. As No Fuckers puts it, the 1990s were one of the lowest points in modern Russian history, where the collapse of the USSR and subsequent implementation of a new political and economic system sent the country into disarray, allowing criminals free rein to prey upon ordinary people's desperation and naivety, as well as the Chechen Wars to top it all off, in which Russia fought against Chechnya's independence, much akin to what Russia is currently doing to Ukraine. To quote the great Niko Bellic himself,
War is where the young and stupid are tricked by the old and bitter into killing each other.
The story of Brother follows Danila Bagrov, who returns home from Chechnya seeking a normal and peaceful life with his brother, only to be unwillingly sucked into the violent world of Russian gangs, where he must try to survive and protect those he cares about. GTA 4 has much the same premise, although it is told as an immigrant story, where Niko has joined his cousin in America only to find that beneath the flashy veneer there is poverty and crime, and the corrupt powerful who prey upon the weak, no different than back home. GTA 4 is often praised for its atmospherically accurate depiction of New York City, but the atmosphere also neatly aligns with that of these Russian films.
For me, as someone from here, Grand Theft Auto 4 really captured a really good moment in time of the city, especially considering it's not modeled after New York City completely, it's Liberty City. It's a fictional city, but it is just very, very representative of New York, like down to everything. So there's Algonquin, which is Manhattan. There's Broker, which is Brooklyn, where you start out. There's Dukes, which is Queens. There's Bohan, which is the Bronx. And I gotta say, man, they did a really good job of nailing each one of those districts. It captures that vibe, it captures that feeling. It's also just a great fall setting video game, and while it was released in a time where a lot of games were just very gray and brown and drab, it was kind of just a trend of video game graphics at the time, it still had an iconic look to it because it made sense for the setting.
The gritty tone of the game, the occasional darkly comedic aspects, and Niko Belic's character as a hardened and stone-cold killer who, deep down, is a sensitive man who wishes to be kind and to leave the violence all behind him, all feel thematically and tonally aligned with media coming out of Eastern Europe. This, once again, reiterates how America isn't all too different from the places it often looks down on. It just has a more crisp coat of paint. And while it was just one station, GTA 4 had Vladivostok FM, a station that plays Russian, Belarusian, and Ukrainian music chosen by the Ukrainian musician Ruslana Lyzhenko, who also plays the station's DJ. Intentionally or not, some of the music also appeared in the Brother films. The radio stations are a neat little tribute to the various cultures of New York. Jamaican characters play a role in the story, and they also have their own station playing Jamaican music, and to the cultures inspiring the game and story of Niko. While Poland may have been a satellite state under a socialist regime, Poland as we know it today came around following the collapse of the Soviet Union all the same, and is notable to gamers as the home of The Witcher.
It's impossible to talk about The Witcher without taking into account the cultural landscape that brought it about. This is a uniquely Slavic game, both in its lore and the way in which it was designed, and the company that created it is uniquely Polish, born out of decades of bleak socialist rule.
The Witcher franchise was created by author Andrzej Sapkowski. As an avid fantasy reader, he wanted to write his own to submit to a magazine's competition, and decided to reimagine a classic Polish fairy tale. Poor cobblers make good shoes. They don't kill monsters. Soldiers and knights, they are idiots generally. And priests only want the money and fucking adolescents. So who's killing monsters? Professionals. Thus, he created Witchers, professional, mutagenically enhanced monster slayers for hire. The original Witcher short story, simply titled The Witcher, sees the Witcher, Geralt of Rivia, tasked with freeing a princess cursed to become a Striga. In Slavic folklore, Strigas are female demons, akin to the vampire in that they have a human-like form, but they're undead and prey upon the living. The inspiration for the Witcher's iteration was Striga, a rendition of the Striga folk tale by Polish romantic writer Roman Zmorski. In Striga, the Striga curse is punishment for an incestuous relationship, possessing the body of a child born of incest, and only the pure-hearted and faithful hero of the story can cure the child of the curse. In The Witcher, the child is also born of incest, but it was the spite of a jealous, unrequited lover that cursed the child. Instead of portraying monsters as beings of evil to be defeated by pure-hearted paragons, like in the romantic folktales, S.T.A.L.K.E.R portrays monsters as being animalistic and grounded. The world of The Witcher was shaped by a cosmic event called the Conjunction of the Spheres, which saw magic and creatures from other planes of existence brought into the world. So their arcane nature is explained by them having come from worlds with different laws of nature. The Polish public absolutely adored S.T.A.L.K.E.'s story and demanded more, so he continued to write short stories and eventually full-length novels that became the Witcher saga. Like G.R.R. Martin, S.T.A.L.K.E.R was well known among fans of their genre, and in fact the two authors know each other and are friends, but was otherwise obscure, outside of Poland at least, until his work would receive a more accessible adaptation to bring him to the mainstream, and for S.T.A.L.K.E.R, that came in the form of a video game developed by CD Projekt Red. Like GSC Game World, CD Projekt came out of a post-Soviet economy, CDPR in 1994 and GSC in 1995. Bear in mind that Poland only became independent in 1989 and Ukraine in 1991. Computers and game consoles were still extremely rare and expensive in post-communist countries. According to Yevgen Grigorovich, brother of GSC's founder Sergey, their father used the money that the family was saving up to buy a car to purchase their first computer. Ultimately, GSC Game World became the first gaming company in Ukraine. In Warsaw, most systems were purchased in Berlin and resold, distributed primarily among geeks and hobbyists. And because these countries didn't have copyright laws in place, what would be called piracy today was the status quo. CD Projekt only started after copyright law was introduced and broke up the game swapping scene. Many early games were on tapes that people could copy and share or resell at markets. Polish radio stations would even broadcast the data for gamers to record. Marcin Iwiniski,
retard, won't learn anything from you.
Marcin Iwiniski, one of CD Projekt's co-founders, got his start in the industry after responding to a GameSwap ad posted by someone in Greece, which gave him access to games that no one else in Poland had. He used the money he made to purchase one of the first CD-ROMs in Poland, importing games from a wholesaler in Indiana. The vastly increased storage offered by CD-ROM revolutionized what games could do. CD Projekt started out as a publisher by importing, localizing, and publishing American products, such as the now classic CRPG Baldur's Gate, for the Polish market, which then saw gaming expand beyond a small niche interest in the country. Later, they would create a development studio as an offshoot, CD Projekt Red, and secured the rights to make a game based on the Witcher saga, which Marcin called the Polish Lord of the Rings, because of how culturally significant it was for Poland and the people of his generation. The games carried on after the events of the book series, creating their own canon. The books are canon to the games, but the games aren't canon to the books. The Witcher and The Witcher 2 Assassin of Kings were both good games, but it was The Witcher 3 Wild Hunt that made The Witcher a global gaming phenomenon. Today, The Witcher 3 is regarded as one of the best RPGs ever made, with a vast, immersive world, compelling and emotional storyline, and excellent implementation of player agency. One of the things that sets The Witcher 3 apart from other dark medieval fantasy stories is how, like its source material, it is steeped in Slavic lore. The central plot of The Witcher 3 follows Geralt as he is searching for his long-lost surrogate daughter, Ciri, who is being pursued by the Wild Hunt. This plot alone is a sweeping epic rooted in Slavic culture, as it is based on the mythical Wild Hunt. Like Ukraine, having such a successful series rooted in their culture is an act of resistance and reclamation of their heritage and identity by putting their culture out into the world for others to see, enjoy, and recognize as belonging to Poland. The medium of games allowed for CD Projekt to seamlessly incorporate more elements of Polish and Slavic culture than the books through the many side quests and the world design. Depictions of traditional clothing, architecture, art, music, and the various landscapes inspired by Central and Eastern Europe portrayed without the Soviet gray filter of games such as Metro and STALKER that is often stereotypically associated with Central and Eastern Europe. Lewinsky stated that the primary color of socialism in his experience was
gray. So socialism for me is gray.
It's no coincidence that the primary color palette of Metro and STALKER is primarily made up of grays and browns. Also note that the utopian Atomic Heart has a diverse palette with particularly striking use of red. GTA 4 uses a dark blue and gray palette, which is in keeping with the limited colors of games from its time and conveying the atmosphere of New York City in fall, which also aligns with the cold and dreary colors associated with communist environments. Like GTA 4's Vladivostok FM, The Witcher 3 also includes culturally significant certified bangers in its soundtrack, in the form of Polish folk music combined with hard rock, played on traditional Polish, medieval, and orchestral instruments to create a soundtrack like no other. Eastern and Central European countries have a history often characterized by ethnic violence and pogroms, from occupations by Russia, the Soviets, and Nazi Germany, to the conflicts in Balkan states. Poland's geography meant it was often caught in the middle of the nonsense plaguing the Central Eastern European world, finding their culture and language suppressed by occupying powers. In The Witcher, the ethnic violence experienced in Polish history is often directed towards non-human races, like elves, dwarves, halflings, and dopplers, through hate crimes, lynchings, and pogroms conducted by humans. Mages aren't safe either. Witchers, too, are often viewed with suspicion and disdain because they are mutants and wanderers.
You are a mutant, a freak, a useless relic of a bygone age that should be burned like a withered branch.
How many people's lives have you saved? From Bruxay, from Leshens?
That has no bearing.
Asked you a question. How many? There's something to think about, folks.
What's strange is you. Everyone knows witches are freaks, mutants, unnatural. And this here's a decent brothel for whores with principles.
Then there's the southern Nilfgaardian Empire, who see the people of the northern kingdoms as barbarous savages to be subjugated. In The Witcher 3, the invasion is an ever-present backdrop. You witness wartime atrocities and enmity as you traverse the no-man's land of Velen, and mages and non-humans burned on pyres in the city of Novigrad. There is racism, religious zealotry, and instances of discriminatory violence wherever you go. Depending on player choices, the world will change. Quest lines will play out differently. Major and minor characters will live or die. and the ending will change, all without ever feeling like the story unravels or loses quality because you didn't go down the intended path. You can help mages flee the city, and you can stand up for the downtrodden, or you can stay out of it. Sometimes your good intentions turn around to bite you, and you only make it worse.
Think the lady's grown tired of your company.
Lady? What lady? See her ears? She-elf. And everyone knows elves are always doing something on the sly.
I'm not doing anything, I swear it. I must just fetch some water.
Where will you put it? Where's your jug, eh? Where's your bucket?
Why don't you just tell the truth?
What do you mean, Bar? She's a non-human. Lions in their blood.
Don't let that fair face beguile you, Witcher. Pretty as a picture on the outside, she-elves, but the most vile filth within.
Leave her be.
By what right you giving me orders, eh?
Let's go, Reddy. Killing's like batting an eye for Witchman.
You can breathe. It's over.
Over? For you, perhaps. You'll go on your merry way. But I must stay here, and they will too.
Nothing I can do about that.
Then why get involved at all? You didn't scare those boars off for my sake, but for your own. To feel just and noble. A knight on a swiving white steed. Or do I have it all? Go, Vatgern. And remember, we neither need nor want your pity.
Stop. Can't handle all this gratitude. We really ought to learn our manners from the elder races. That's plain to see.
What would you expect? Payment? Or am I to fall into your arms? Perhaps spread my legs for you? Go, Vatgern. And remember, we neither need nor want your pity.
What's going on here?
Fuck all to do with you. Piss off.
Lady doesn't feel like talking to you.
I can handle this.
Shut your trap.
Get out of here, or I'll kill you.
Criminy, what's with the aggro? To talk a killing doll?
Who told you to butt in, eh?
Huh?
You all right, darling?
This masquerade. Just not a good idea, I don't think.
See what you've done? He's broken character now.
I think I'll be on my way.
I should think so.
It's the weaving of these dark elements of real history and Polish culture into the gameplay that makes The Witcher 3 such a definitive RPG, one that demands the player to think carefully about their choices. Games have the unique ability to tell branching narratives, which allow writers to tell smaller stories without distracting or subtracting from the main story. In the case of The Witcher 3, this allowed the developers to include various other nods to and retellings of Slavic stories and aspects of that culture that wouldn't have fit into the main storyline. Early on, Geralt learns that Ciri supposedly quarreled with a witch. While searching for this witch, he finds Keira Metz, a former advisor to the late King Foltest, who is now in hiding because of the persecution of mages ordered by King Radovid's witch hunters in the Church of Eternal Fire.
Keira Metz, deep in the heart of Velen. Thought you hated the countryside.
I can assure you I do. Now more than ever.
Heard a witch lived out here. Never would have guessed it was King Foltest's former advisor.
I'm so pleased the world's still able to astound you, Geralt. I actually envy you that sense of wonder. Common in children, knights errant, and morons.
So, bet you saw this question coming. What are you doing here?
Let me think. Enjoying the country air? Admiring the unspoilt scenery? Or is it furthering the age-old alliance between the city and its breadbasket? No. I'm in hiding, Geralt. Blind to the state of the world? Don't you see what's happening?
Mean the persecution mages now face?
Yes, that's exactly what I mean. Radovid's new pastime. Pursuing anyone with a whiff of magic about them. Witch hunters. Sound familiar? Murderers scouring the north from end to end, burning books, hanging soothsayers, torturing herbalists.
Picked a strange place to hide.
I didn't pick anything. In the north, Radovid's men hunt sorceresses like fish in a barrel. Nilfgaard controls the south. Where was I to flee?
Emperor does keep mages on a short leash, but he lets them live and ply their trade.
Radovid and Emma differ in every respect except one. They share a deep hatred of the Lodge of Sorceresses. And I was a member.
She hasn't seen Ciri. This was a red herring, but she offers to help Geralt in exchange for a few favors, one of which is lifting a curse over Fyke Isle. He will learn that the former Lord of Velen had taken refuge in a sorcerer's tower on the island, fearing the Nilfgaardi in advance. Later, starving peasants stormed the island, believing the nobles were hoarding food, and the Lord's daughter, Annabelle, took a sleeping potion to play dead. The peasants, including her secret lover Graham, overlooked her as they believed she was dead. But before the potion wore off completely, the mice and rats, which were attracted by the corpses, came and ate her paralyzed body. To lift the curse, she must forgive Graham for abandoning her, and she asked Geralt to return her bones to him to be buried. If Geralt agrees, once her bones are with Graham, she becomes a plague maiden, or Pesta, and kills him before Geralt can do anything. Alternatively, if Geralt refuses to do this, she will become a plague maiden and attack him right then.
You never wished to help me, and here I had someone would finally take pity on me.
If that happens, to lift the curse, Geralt must bring Graham to her. There, he will explain that he thought she was dead and prove his love with a kiss. She reverts back to a ghost and becomes a corporeal body, but he will die too. And once the lovers are reunited in death, the curse is broken. The Plague Maiden itself is a specter inspired by the Pesta of Norwegian folklore, a personification of plague. And the story of Fyke Island Tower is loosely based on the legend of Misha Wieza, or Mouse Tower. The name of the tower derives from the folk legend. As a consequence of his bad rule, Prince Popiel II was deposed, besieged by his subjects, and eaten alive by mice in a tower in Kruszwica. If Fyke Isle was a main quest, it likely would have felt like filler and busy work, inconsequential compared to Geralt's quest to save his surrogate daughter, but making it an optional side quest allows it to stand on its own merit as a story. Geralt finding Kira while following a lead on Ciri explains why he stops and takes the time to go to Fyke Isle, so it feels like a natural progression of the story even as a side quest, and the outcome of Kira's story affects the main story later on. The reason Kira wanted the curse lifted was so she could search the tower for research on plague done by the mage who lived there. When Geralt discovers he had been manipulated, he confronts her, and she admits he was hoping to use the notes to bargain with King Radovid, who ordered the witch hunts, exchanging them for a pardon. The conversation can end in one of three ways. First, Geralt can offer to let her stay in the Witcher's fortress, Kaer Morhen, in exchange for the notes, and she'll accept and will participate as an ally in the later acts of the main questline. Secondly, he can demand the notes outright, refusing to let a murderous king have them to possibly weaponize, which results in a fight and Kira's death at your hands. Thirdly, you can let her go and do as she wishes, which ultimately leads to her execution by impalement on Radovid's orders. If you don't follow Kira's questline, she will always end up impaled because Geralt wasn't there to prevent her from seeking Radovid's pardon.
Alexander was studying the Catriona plague. I'll use his notes to produce medication, perhaps a cure, or at least a vaccine.
Strictly humanitarian motivations, is that it?
No, strictly selfish ones. The mighty would pay willingly for such a remedy. Can you imagine how much? Take Radovid, for instance. Why, he might even consider forgetting my past associations with the Lodge.
Radovid doesn't forget, and Radovid doesn't forgive, especially when it comes to sorceresses.
He'll make an exception for me. He'll have to. I have something he wants.
Please, you don't believe that.
Well, you believe Yennefer will stop treating you like a dog someday. Don't see me laughing. I'm going to see Radovid. Tell him of this research, whether you like it or not.
This is suicide, Kira. You'll wind up tied to a stake, burned to bolster the morals of the masses while entertaining them.
Shut up for a moment and look at me. See this? Bedbugs, Geralt. Bloody bedbugs. I, Kira Metz, advisor to Foltest, a member of the Lodge of Sorceresses, have bedbugs. Think what you will, but I'll not stay in this bloody swamp one day more. Not one day. I shall cross the Pontar, and that means Radovid's men will find me sooner or later. Don't you understand? I don't have a choice. I will have to parley.
Got another option. Go to Kaer Morhen.
You believe I'd be safe there?
Long as you don't piss Lambert off, yes. Emir, Radovid, neither will be able to reach you. Find little in the way of luxury there, but we do have clean sheets.
It's a long way, well beyond the dividing line. But if I keep to the woods until I reach the Kestrel Mountains, I should pass through unnoticed. So be it. Seems I find it hard to refuse you, handsome. You've clearly a notion of what women want, how they think.
Yeah, kinda. So before I go, I'll need you to hand me those notes.
All right, take them already. Farewell, Geralt. Or rather, see you soon.
Having a branching narrative creates depth and allows players to return to the game for a second playthrough and still find new things and to make different choices, and to see the story play out differently based on them. Again, all of Kira's quests are optional, yet this side story is so neatly integrated into the main story that it doesn't feel like a side story at all. Plus, it all serves to seamlessly include cultural Easter eggs into the story as well, both paying homage to Poland and adding depth to the world of the story and the narrative. A hugely successful but wildly different RPG to come out of Central Europe is Kingdom Come: Deliverance, developed by Warhorse Studios. What sets KCD apart is that it set out to create a strictly historically accurate portrayal of life in medieval Bohemia, what is now a part of the Czech Republic, as opposed to a fantastical world with an emphasis on action, like The Witcher. It was so out of the ordinary for the RPG genre that many publishers rejected the project, and the game was only made possible through a successful Kickstarter campaign. The Czech Republic is another formerly communist country whose people faced all the same hardships as Ukrainians, Poles, and Russians. Creative director Dan Vavra said,
Moje první setkání s tím režimním prostředím bylo, že jsem se přihlásil do počítačového kroužku a když jsme tam přišli, jak tam neměli počítače a začali nás učit, co je to dioda. A řekli, že počítače budou možná příští rok. Tohle jako profese vůbec jako neexistovalo, ani na tom západě vlastně pořádně ne, že jo? A natož tady.
Vavra was fascinated with the medieval history in the various castles around the Czech Republic.
Teď znáš nějaký filmy český, který jako mimo tuhle zemi nikomu nic nebudou říkat, ale ve skutečnosti tady jsou jako dost jiný než ty anglické filmy třeba. Jsou taky jako trošku bych řekl, že až definujou tu třeba generaci, že prostě každý je odkojený těma, jako když si představíš ještě rytíře a hrady, tak máš prostě filmy od Takara Vávry třeba. Ty jeho filmy jsou vlastně vizuálně super, takže opravdu jsem chtěl, aby ta naše hra byla vizuálně tomu nějak trošku jako podobná třeba. A hlavně to dělali jako fakt realisticky, nebylo to jako fake, že opravdu ten Vávra byl překvapivě jako já, dost takový pedant na detaily.
One such detail is in the combat, simulating just how exhausting armored melee combat truly is. Dan Vavra doesn't like the over-reliance on violence in games. He ensured that the majority of quests could be completed in non-violent ways, and ensured the combat in the games would be just as wearisome and deadly as it is in real life to promote avoiding combat whenever possible. The story is rooted in real historical events, with many of the characters being real historical figures, and plays with the vagaries of medieval record-keeping to insert the player character, Henry of Skalitz, and his story into actual events. While the game does bend some realities to make concessions to technology and fun, such as allowing the protagonist to climb the social ladder in such a way that likely wouldn't have happened, the game takes painstaking care to make an immersive, historically accurate world for the player to inhabit, down to topography and recreations of historical structures and castles, to it being illegal to walk around in town after dark without a torch. According to Jakub Holik, the environmental art lead, the team made around 60 visits to the area surrounding Ratai, where the game takes place. What's ironic is that, after the Kickstarter was announced, Western media was enthusiastic about the game, but the Czech media was hypercritical, yet Dan Vavra occasionally got stopped on the street by people excited about the game. Even before the game's campaign went live, media outlets such as GameSpot had already spread the word. The goal was to raise around £300,000, but the campaign brought in £1,105,931, donated by 35,368 people. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 released on February 4th, 2025, and racked up over 1 million sales in the first 24 hours after its release, recouping its development costs. The Czech media certainly ate their words, as KCD is a huge hit at home and abroad. According to Warhorse's Tobias Stoltz-Willing, we showed the world Czech history, European history, and people identify with that, but not only the gamers. There are so-called Czech centers, and they want to use Kingdom Come Deliverance as a representation of the Czech Republic as a cultural export and such. It is something like The Witcher for Poland, right? While patriotism did motivate many of the devs, the Czech Republic has a successful industry, with enormously popular games like Bohemia Interactive's Arma 3, regarded as the definitive title of the military simulation genre, and SCS Software's Euro Truck Simulator and American Truck Simulator, also being definitive titles for their genres.
You sent that guy, so hey, you landed back on your wheels.
Seems like the Czechs do like their realistic, slow-paced games. What drove Warhorse was a particular passion for the history in the locale they were representing. The game includes a sprawling encyclopedia, or codex, detailing the history of everything you interact with. As you visit locations, meet characters, or engage with gameplay systems, you will get little notifications that you have a new entry to read to inform you about the history and context of what you just played, from combat, to the role of bathhouses in society, to dice games, to literacy. Your character, Henry, is a peasant blacksmith. He can't read, so you have to visit a scribe and have him teach you how. In KCD, you level up each skill individually, separate from your main level. At first, every book looks like utter gibberish, but as you level up your reading skills, letters start appearing in the correct place so you can parse things together with a little effort, until finally, every word is decoded once you max out that skill. There's a quest called Needle in a Haystack, where you, posing as a bandit, are tasked by the bandits with infiltrating a monastery to kill a former bandit who has become a monk, to prove your worth and loyalty to the gang. Rather than a quick, guided sequence before returning you to usual gameplay, you're forced to live as monks did, attending prayers, meals, and doing your duties. The difficulty lies in completing your objectives without being caught breaking any of the strict rules imposed upon monks. I spend an entire afternoon just trying to get through that part. Being an RPG, you're allowed to approach the quest in any number of ways. You can live amongst the monks, speak with the people, and use your intuition to figure out which novice monk is the bandit. Then you can confront them and try to strike a deal that suits you both. You can kill them in their sleep, or you can just murder any of the novices and try to convince the bandits it was the right one. Or you can just kill all of them to play it safe. One of the DLC story expansions focuses specifically on the experiences of women during the period. The inciting incident of KCD is the sacking of Skalitz, which you initially experience from Henry's perspective, living through a typical day as a blacksmith before the town is attacked. A Woman's Lot sees you play through the same events from the perspective of Henry's love interest, Teresa, I have no idea, I can't remember. Where most of the game is about Henry's journey from unmartially skilled peasant to formidable and respected warrior, A Woman's Lot is about the life of a medieval woman, and then, in the face of danger, using your wits to come through, which serves as a sort of commentary on a woman's lot at the time. One of the ways the game does play loose with history and expected tropes is with the Millers. As explained by the in-game codex, since the mills stood apart from the other village houses, millers were often the subject of gossip and were accused of earning money on the side in nefarious ways, from selling customers short on flour to outright witchcraft, thievery, and trafficking in stolen goods. The latter accusations in particular were certainly defamatory and without a grain of truth. Nice milling pun, by the way. The game lets you play however you like, meaning you can be a criminal and a thief. If you want to move your stolen goods, millers can serve as your fences and can even give you jobs. Utilizing the social attitudes and stigmas of the period is a neat way of incorporating the desired sandbox RPG mechanics without straying from the historically accurate design philosophy. While KCD2 is influenced by the work of Czech filmmaker Otakar Vavra, Ghost of Tsushima was developed by the American studio Sucker Punch as a love letter to Japan and classic samurai films. Ghost of Tsushima is set during the 1274 Mongol invasion of Japan on the island of, you guessed it, Tsushima. You are Jin Sakai, one of the few surviving samurai following a decisive Mongol landing, and you take it upon yourself to liberate your homeland. However, you are vastly outnumbered, and to fight back, you are pushed to use tactics that violate the samurai code, and much of Jin's journey is oriented around his sense of honor, conflicting with a sense of duty to commit necessary evils. Based on what you do, the world and characters react to you with differing attitudes, similar to the honor system of Red Dead Redemption 1. Wind is a recurring motif in the game, inspired by both the divine winds that destroyed the Mongol fleets and the cinematography of Chanbara samurai films, particularly the work of Akira Kurosawa, which emphasizes incidental motion in the environment. That's not an easy thing to do, have everything in your game react to wind if possible. About 2 years later, a year and a half later, the game had it. Everything was windy. There were trees moving, and grass moving, capes moving, and hair moving, and particles. It was insane. It helps contribute to a world that has a painterly quality, where you can look at the landscape and recognize it as Japanese even without any uniquely Japanese landmarks. As a special nod to Kurosawa's work, the game includes a Kurosawa mode, which applies a visual and sound filter to mimic the feel of his films, such as making the winds whistling and howling louder than in the base game. To help understand the culture and history beyond films, they contacted a fellow studio under the Sony Interactive Entertainment umbrella, aptly named Japan Studio. Japan Studio flew some of Sucker Punch's devs to Japan for a tour of various historical sites led by a historian, including the island of Tsushima and Komodohama, the beach where the Mongols landed. With the help of Japan Studio, Sucker Punch also spent time talking to consultants and historians. Sucker Punch even flew in modern-day practitioners of the samurai sword fighting style to consult on the game and do some motion capture. After making the game world exceptionally windy, they realized it could be used to guide the player, so the direction of the wind points you to your current tracked objective, eliminating the need for a minimap or floating icons. So there was just a desire to have a relatively minimal HUD. I think also one of the things we love about this time and this culture is the use of negative space, the use of openness, the simplicity of design that culturally is very appropriate. Yet they also use some anachronistic elements because they would be more familiar to modern and Western audiences, such as including modern haiku instead of the style of poetry actually written at the time. This has been the historically based storyteller's dilemma for all of history, knock on wood. But Ghost of Tsushima has always been primarily focused on capturing the feel of being a samurai from a samurai movie, rather than a historical retelling. The way I think about it is, we're going to deviate from historical truth. We just want to do it intentionally. All the cultural consultants we've assembled to help us do this stuff is to make sure we don't deviate accidentally. There are things we are going to do that are different, and we want to do those wisely. The narrative and the gameplay is the priority, and the history is the backdrop, rather than the approach taken by KCD, where the gameplay is in service of immersing you in a real moment in history, which contributes to much of the narrative. As much as it pains me to say anything positive about sports games, because sports games deservedly suffer the same criticism year to year, often changes are only minor. It can feel like a $60 roster update, and development teams rarely have the time needed to actually overhaul the game. I still have to give due credit to MLB The Show 23 for how it included the Negro Leagues. Sony partnered with the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum to create a campaign specifically dedicated to the Negro Leagues and their history, presented as a series of playable documentaries featuring 8 legendary players who dominated baseball. MLB The Show and similar series such as EA's Madden, NHL, and FIFA follow a similar design structure for their core gameplay, where you control an entire team, dynamically switching between players on the fly. They often have career modes, where you progress through seasons and leagues and whatnot until you win the Super Bowl or the World Series of America or whatever. I'm a gamer, I don't really understand sports ball, sorry. However, in MLB The Show 23, they created a campaign specifically highlighting important players and moments from Negro League's history, complete with mini-documentaries narrated by Negro League's Baseball Museum president Bob Kendrick. Ramon Russell and Kendrick say they worked together with the families of the deceased players to gather archival footage and use it to create digital versions of the players in the stadiums. That authenticity is felt throughout the game. The enthusiasm of baseball fans, indeed, these games are played as much by baseball fans as they are by the broader gaming public, is palpable. These types of games' success is as much in part due to their ability to capture the culture and spirit of ball playing as their ability to captivate their audience. The Negro Leagues mode never overstays its welcome, as we often see in historical modes. Instead, you're dropped into 1 or 2 innings and given a very specific task. With Satchel Paige, it might be not allowing a single hit in 2 innings and striking out 3, only using Paige's 105-mile-per-hour fastball. Then everything gets flipped, with all the pitch types being replaced with Paige's own unique nicknames for them, like the B-ball, the dipsy-do, and the bat dodger.
Satchel had what he called his midnight creeper. He had the two-humper. He had the bat dodger. He had the hesitation pitch. He had the long tom, the short tom, the jump ball, the trouble ball, the radio ball, the wobbly ball, the dipsy-do. And he also had a pitch that he famously called his B-ball. You know why he called it the B-ball? Because Satchel says, it be's where I want it to be when I want it to be there.
It adds a whole level of uniqueness to the game and feels so different as Paige uses his iconic whirlwind windup and his high leg kick to deliver unparalleled heat. Then, before long, Kendrick is back on the screen to tell a story of when Satchel's Kansas City Monarchs were playing a semi-pro all-white team, who recorded a hit off of Paige during their first at-bat. Upon hearing racial jeers from their dugout and claims that Paige wasn't good, he called in his entire team, all of them, to sit in the infield and watch him pitch, daring his opponents to get a hit off him again. They didn't, and MLB The Show 23 lets you play this out. There's obvious importance and gravitas when it comes to the Negro Leagues. A lot of players never got the recognition they deserved because of segregation in baseball, so this mode is about finding a small way to right that wrong with a new generation of fans. Still, it's created a blueprint for what every sports video game should do moving forward. This is all very excellent and commendable, and MLB The Show 24 continued their partnership with the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum to create a Season 2 of the Negro League storylines, including 4 more stories and 6 more were added later. By having players conquer the same challenges as these figures, such as striking players out as Satchel Paige, the players get to feel the same triumphs they did, which creates a unique and profound connection between the audience and the characters. However, is a mark of the pervasive degeneracy and avarice which plague sports games. They advertise their collectors the Negro Leagues edition as including full game, access to both PS4 and PS5, limited edition physical steelbook, limited edition new era trademark MLB The Show 950 rights reserved. 4 days early access begins March 5th, 2024. Double daily login rewards for the life cycle of MLB The Show 24. 1 Barrier Breakers Diamond Choice Pack, 1 Legend Diamond Choice Pack, 5 Gold Choice Packs, 1 Equipment Pack, 1 Cover Athlete Bat Skin, 20 The Show Trademark Packs, 20,000 stubs trademark for MLB The Show 24. And what will all this swag cost? Nothing less than $124.99 US. Although, for every Negro Leagues edition sold, Sony will generously donate a whole $1 to the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum, if it is bought within the US prior to December 31st, 2024, that is. The commercialization of culture has long been criticized, be it through goods or media, and I'd say rightly so. But when done with respect and tact, even monetized stories can do a whole lot of good. Journey to the West is a hallmark of East Asian literature and has been retold many times in many mediums. For example, the manga, anime, and now live-action Netflix show One Piece is inspired by Journey to the West. But recently, Journey to the West was adapted to gaming in Black Myth Wukong, introducing a whole new audience to the story by capitalizing on the recent boom of the Souls-like genre. It was a massive success, in and out of China, and became one of the fastest-selling games of all time, as Chinese audiences were clamoring for a high production value game celebrating their heritage, and foreign audiences were captivated by the new and interesting story and world presented by the game. Alright, I'm about to butcher your language, so apologies to any Inuks in the audience, assuming that Inuk is the correct term. Never Alone, Kisima Inukshinung, oh my god, Kisima Inungikchunga is an adaptation of the Inupiat folktale Kunuksayuka. Kisima Inukikchunga is an adaptation of the Inupiat folktale Kunuksayuka. Okay. And the developers at Upper One Games partnered with various Inupiat storytellers and cultural experts to properly tell the tale, including a series of mini-documentaries that explain the cultural significance of the story, its themes and morals, to the Inupiat. Upper One Games was founded by the Cook Inlet Tribal Council, with support from Eline Media, with the aim of gaining financial independence from federal and state backers while still retaining the organization's goal of supporting and promoting Indigenous Alaskans. It proved to be a huge success, and according to the Never Alone website, the game was honored to be included in over 75 Best of 2014 lists, and has seen inclusion in the Smithsonian and Field Museum, is now a permanent part of MoMA's collection, and has won the prestigious Peabody Award for its storytelling and BAFTA for Best Debut Game. Both Never Alone and Black Myth Wukong are celebrations of cultures and retellings of stories that, at least in the West, are rarely given a spotlight, and both stand as a testament to the capabilities of games to raise awareness of and preserve the legacy of culturally significant stories. By embracing new mediums, these stories are being told and passed on to new generations that otherwise might not connect with them as closely as they do in their preferred mediums. Moreover, the medium of gaming allows for these stories, their themes, and morals to be communicated in new ways that haven't been done before.